Hey, what's going on? In this video, I'm going to be making a set of 3 Damascus kitchen knives. There'll be an 8-inch chef knife, a 6.5-inch nakiri, and a 3.5-inch paring knife. I'm making the Damascus from 1084 and 15N20 steel, and I'm starting out with 19 layers. I'll eventually get through 2 more restacks, getting me to a total of 228 layers. The first step in making Damascus is to clean all of the surfaces of the steel you want to forge weld. I grind off all the mill scale with a 60 grit belt and then hit all of the surfaces with a 120 grit belt. I'll wipe everything down with some acetone to remove any lingering oils and grease before tack welding up the stack. I like to give my billets a soak in WD-40 before putting them in the forge. The oil burns off in the forge and leaves behind a carbon film that helps keep oxygen out from between the layers of steel. Heat and oxygen form scale on the steel, and if that happens between your layers, they won't forge weld in that spot. Another method to get around scale is to apply a flux, which dissolves forge scale. Unfortunately, it also wreaks havoc on the forge liner, so I try to avoid it whenever I can. This is going to be random pattern Damascus, so I won't be doing anything intentional to distort the naturally occurring pattern in the layers of steel. I'm making a set of knives here, so I want to have enough Damascus in this one billet to make all 3 knives. That should give better cohesion across the set and really make them look like they belong together. I try to forge knives as close to shape as possible, mostly just because forging is fun and grinding sucks. When making Damascus knives, I tend to go a little thicker before heat treat. That gives me a little more room for errors that I can fix on the grinder, and it ensures I have plenty of material to grind through the decarb layer in the steel. I ran 3 normalization cycles on these knives, one at 1650, 1500, and 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. I guess somehow normalization has become a contentious issue in the knife making world. Some people say only the temperature of your last cycle matters, and I don't think that's accurate, and I'll give you my 2 cents. When you heat this steel in particular to above around 1500 to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, you completely dissolve the carbides and they're able to move freely throughout the grain boundaries in the steel. The hotter and longer that you expose the steel to high heat, the larger your grain growth will be. Because of that, in my first cycle at 1650, I want to heat the blade high enough to ensure that I've completely dissolved the carbides. This will allow the carbides to more uniformly distribute throughout the steel along the grain boundaries. My next cycle at 1500 degrees is meant to act as an intermediary step that will allow for carbide movement, but also shrink the grain size even further. It's important to keep in mind that the goal of normalization is twofold: shrink the grain size in the steel and also to allow the most even distribution of carbides as possible. The last cycle at 1400 is purely about grain reduction. The austenitizing temperature, meaning the specific temperature required to dissolve the carbides for 1084 steel, is around 1450 to 1480 degrees Fahrenheit. I quenched these knives at 1475 in Parks 50 quench oil that was heated to around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're quenching multiple blades, it's important to keep an eye on the temperature of your quench oil. I think the specified temperature range for Parks 50 is something like 100 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, having gone through that lengthy heat treatment discussion, I can see where you might be tempted to remove 1 or 2 of those normalization cycles, but I don't like it. In my opinion, you need multiple cycles aimed at shrinking the grain size and evenly distributing the carbides in the steel to get the best results. Keep in mind that it's not like flipping a light switch. Just because you heat a blade to 1480 doesn't mean that the grain is instantly shrunk and the carbides are distributed perfectly uniformly. You need the cycling to allow the grain structure to shrink and the carbides to uniformly distribute themselves throughout the steel. I suppose that's enough about heat treat. Let's move on to a less divisive topic, like politics. Just kidding. Feel free to argue with me in the comments if you want. About knife stuff though, not politics. I etched these knives for 3 5-minute cycles in ferric chloride and sanded with 2500 grit sandpaper between etches. I finished it off with about a 2-hour soak in coffee. Sunshine jewelry polishing cloths work great for removing the excess oxides once the Damascus is etched and finished. I pretty much exclusively use Odie's oil on my handles. I like to apply 3 coats of oil and I give them at least 12 hours of cure time between coats. I'd love it if you'd send me some Odie's oil. Odie. I'm going to kind of fly through the other 2 knives here since it's a lot more the same as the first knife. I sharpened all of these knives at a 20-degree edge on diamond stones by Ultra Sharp, and I took them up to a 3000 grit stone before hitting a double-sided leather strop loaded with 5 micron and 3.5 micron diamond paste. If you're looking to buy any of the tools and materials I use in my videos, including these sweet angle guides, you can find links to most of them on my website, davidmoonforge.com, under the product links tab. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.